Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Cole Phillips, author of The Adventure of the Twisted Truths and host of the Book and Dagger. Today we're going to be continuing our read along of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit, picking up right where we left off, which is chapter 11, On the Doorstep. So basically, Bilbo and the dwarves, after their fortnight of partying and just having fun in Lake Town, eating up all the food, um, they finally get all their supplies loaded on the boats and they start to head in the direction of the Lonely Mountain. So they reach the land, they dock, and they have to walk a little ways to the desolate waste before they get to the Lonely Mountain. So load all the supplies on the ponies that the master of the lake town has given them. But none of the men who have brought the ponies are going to stay with them because they're afraid of the mountain. They say they won't stay until the songs have come true, and they chicken out and they hurry off, even though night is coming. But anyway, so the dwarves and Bilbo, they pack all their stuff on their ponies, and they set out, and Balin and Bilbo rode behind, each leading another pony heavily laden beside him. The others were some way ahead, picking out the slow road, for there were no paths. They made northwest, slanting away from the river running, and drawing ever nearer and nearer to the great spur of the mountain that was flung out southward toward them. It was a weary journey, and a quiet and stealthy one. There was no laughter or song or sound of harps, and the pride and hopes which had stirred in their hearts at the singing of old songs by the lake died away to the plodding gloom. They knew they were drawing near to the end of their journey, and that it might be a very horrible one. The land about them grew bleak and barren, though once, as Thorin told them, it had been green and fair. There was little grass, and before long there was neither bush nor tree, and only broken and blackened stump, to speak of ones long vanished. They were come to the desolation of the dragon, and they were come at the waning of the year. So basically, if you remember, way back, Gandalf gave Thorin the key that Thorin's father had borne. It was the key to the secret passage in the side of the mountain, where they could slip through, hopefully unnoticed. So that way, they don't have to walk through the front gate, where they'll arouse the attention of the dragon, because they don't know if he's asleep in there. They don't know if he's awake. All they know is they need to sneak in quietly. So they reach the skirts of the mountain, and they basically climb up to little ledges and stuff. Thorin sends out a scouting expedition to spy out the land to the south where the front gate stood. For this purpose, he chose Balin and Fili and Kili, and with them went Bilbo. They marched under the gray and silent cliffs to the feet of Ravenhill. There, the river, after winding a wide loop over the valley of Dale, turned from the mountain on its road to the lake, flowing swiftly and noisily. Its bank was bare and rocky, tall and steep above the stream, and gazing out from it over the narrow water, foaming and splashing among many boulders, they could see in the wide valley shadowed by the mountain's arms the gray ruins of ancient houses, towers, and walls. There lies all that is left of Dale, said Balin. The mountain sides were green with woods, and all the sheltered valley rich and pleasant in the days when the bells rang in that town. He looked both sad and grim as he said this. He had been one of Thorin's companions on the day the dragon came. Anyway, so they return to Thorin, and but as they're going, Bilbo says, "The dragon is still alive in the halls under the mountain, then. Or so I imagine from the smoke," says the Hobbit, because he sees smoke coming from the mountain. Balin says that doesn't prove it, though he doesn't doubt that Bilbo is right. But he might have gone away sometime, or he might be laying out on the mountainside keeping watch, and still I expect smokes and steams would come out of the gates. All the halls must be filled with this foul reek. Anyway, so they go back, and the time begins to crawl on, and they cannot find this door with the keyhole. It is strange to say that Mr. Baggins had more hope than the others, because a lot of the dwarves' spirit is leaving them. Bilbo would often borrow Thorin's map and gaze on it, pondering over the runes and the message of the moon letters Elrond had read. It was he that made the dwarves begin the dangerous search on the western slopes for the secret door. They moved their camp then to a long valley, narrower than the great dale in the south, where the gates of the river stood, and walled with lower spurs of the mountain. Two of these here thrust forward west of the main mass in long, steep-sided ridges that fell ever downward towards the plain. On this western side there were fewer signs of the dragon's marauding feet, and there was some grass for their ponies. From this western camp, shadowed all day by cliff and wall until the sun began to sink towards the forest, day by day they toiled in parties, searching for paths up the mountainside. If the map were true, somewhere high above the cliff at the valley's head must stand the secret door. Day by day they came back to their camp without success. But at last, unexpectedly, they found they were seeking. Fili and Kili and the Hobbit went back one day down the valley and scrambled among the tumbled rocks at its southern corner. About midday, creeping behind a great stone that stood alone like a pillar, Bilbo came on what looked like rough steps going upward. Following these excitedly, he and the dwarves found traces of a narrow track, often lost, often rediscovered, that wandered on the top of the southern ridge and brought them at last to a still narrower ledge which turned north across the face of the mountain. Looking down, they saw they were at the top of the cliff at the valley's head and were gazing down on their own camp below. Silently, clinging to the rocky wall on their right, they went in single file along the ledge till the wall opened and then turned into a little steep-walled bay, grassy floored, still and quiet. Its entrance, which they had found, could not be seen from below because of the overhang of the cliff, nor from further off because it was so small that it looked like a dark crack and no more. It was not a cave and was open to the sky above, but at its inner end a flat wall rose up in that lower part, close to the ground, was as smooth and upright as mason's work, but without a joint or crevice to be seen. No sign was there of a post or lintel or threshold, nor any sign of bar or bolt or keyhole, yet they did not doubt they had found the door at last. They beat on it, they threshed and pushed at it, they implored it to move, they spoke fragments of broken spells of opening, and nothing stirred. At last, tired out, they rested on the grass at its feet, and then at evening began their long climb down. There was excitement in the camp that night. In the morning they prepared to move once more. Only Beaufort and Bomber were left behind to guard the ponies and such stores as they had brought with them from the river. The others went down the valley and up the new-found path, and so to the narrow ledge. There they made their third camp, hauled up what they needed with below from their ropes. Down the same way they were able occasionally to lower one of the more active dwarves, such as Killy, to exchange such news as there was, or to take a share in the guard below, while Beaufort was hauled up to the higher camp. Bomber would not come up either the rope or the path. "I am too fat for such fly walks," he said. "I should turn dizzy and tread on my beard, and then you would be 13 again. And the knotted ropes are too slender for my weight." Luckily for him, that was not true, as you will see. In the meantime, some of them explored the ledge beyond the opening and found a path that led higher and higher on the mountain. But they did not dare venture very far that way, nor was there much use in it. Out up there, silence reigned, broken by no bird or sound except that of the wind in the crannies of stone. They spoke low and never called or sang, for danger brooded in every rock. Anyway, so they try all kinds of things to open the door. Like I said, they try spells, they try sticks, they try stones, they try a pickaxe they brought. Nothing's working. They're sitting on the doorstep of the mountain, as it's called, and nobody can think of anything. As basically they are there for a while, and the year begins to tick on. One day, Thorin says, "Tomorrow begins the last week of autumn." "And winter comes after autumn," said Bifur. "And next year after that," said Dwalin. "And our beards will grow till they hang down the cliff to the valley below before anything happens here. What is our burglar doing for us? Since he has got an invisible ring and ought to be a specially excellent performer now, I am beginning to think he might go through the front gate and spy things out of it." Of course, Bilbo does not want to do this, because if he does, there's a chance the dragon might. Even if the dragon can't see him, the dragon might smell him if he comes to the front gate, and then that would be a disaster because the dragon might kill him and eat him, or then might find the dwarves. And even if the dragon's asleep, he might wake him up. So Bilbo hears this and he thinks, "Good gracious! So that is what they are beginning to think, is it? It is always poor me that has to get them out of their difficulties, at least since the wizard left. Whatever am I going to do? I might have known that something dreadful would happen to me in the end. I don't think I could bear to see the unhappy Valley of Dale again, and as for that steaming gate..." That night he was very miserable and hardly slept. Anyway, but the next day, as he's sitting by the narrow opening, he has a queer feeling that he is waiting for something. Perhaps the wizard will suddenly come back today, he thought. If he lifted his head, he could see a glimpse of the distant forest. As the sun turned west, there was a gleam of yellow upon its far roof, as if the light caught the last pale leaves. Soon he saw the orange ball of the sun sinking towards the level of his eyes. He went to the opening, and there, pale and faint, was a thin new moon above the rim of earth. At that very moment he heard a sharp crack behind him. There, on the gray stone in the grass, was an enormous thrush, nearly coal-black, its pale yellow breast freckled with dark spots. Crack! It had caught a snail and was knocking it on the stone. Crack! Crack! Suddenly Bilbo understood. Forgetting all danger, he stood on the ledge and hailed the dwarves, shouting and waving. Those who were nearest came tumbling over the rocks, and as fast as they could along the ledge to him, wondering what on earth was the matter. The others shouted to be hauled up the ropes, except Bomber, of course. He was asleep. Quickly, Bilbo explained. They all fell silent, the hobbit standing by the grey stone, and the dwarves with wagging beards watching impatiently. The sun sank lower and lower, and their hopes fell. It sank into a bed of reddened cloud and disappeared. The dwarves groaned, but still Bilbo stood, almost without moving. The little moon was dipping to the horizon. Evening was coming on. Then suddenly, when their hope was lowest, a red ray of the sun escaped like a finger through a rent in the cloud. A gleam of light came straight through the opening into the bay and fell on the smooth rock face. The old thrush, who had been watching from a high perch with beady eyes and head cocked on one side, gave a sudden trill. There was a loud crack. A flake of rock split from the wall and fell. A hole appeared suddenly about 3 feet from the ground. Quickly, trembling lest the chant should fade, dwarves rushed to the rock and pushed in vain. "The key! The key!" cried Bilbo. "Where is Thorin?" Thorin hurried up. "The key!" shouted Bilbo. "The key that went with the map! Try it now while there is still time!" Then Thorin stepped up and drew the key from its chain from around his neck. He put it to the hole. It fitted and it turned. Snap! The gleam went out, the sun sank, the moon was gone, and evening sprang into the sky. Now they all pushed together, and slowly a part of the rock wall gave way. Long straight cracks appeared and widened. A door 5 feet high and 3 broad was outlined, and slowly, without a sound, swung inwards. It seemed as if darkness flowed out like a vapor from the hole in the mountainside. A deep darkness in which nothing could be seen lay before their eyes, a yawning mouth leading in and down. And that concludes chapter 11 of The Hobbit. We'll be back with chapter 10 soon, or chapter 12 soon.